Hello everyone, welcome to Lukmaan IAS. Today we are going to have the Hindu analysis of 8th April 2022. We are sorry that we are not able to hold this lecture in a live manner as we have daily lectures. So we regret that due to some reasons we are not able to hold that. So yes, but you are receiving this as a recorded video. But from tomorrow onwards, of course, there will be live lecture at morning 10 o'clock as a routine. Okay. So yes, these are the important articles. First of all, let us understand the overview or the context of these articles, then we'll go in detail. So you can see that majority of the articles, they relate to our IR section of syllabus, polity and IR section of syllabus. Yes, so why India's stand of being neutral is correct. There is one article on page number 6, editorial page, and it is explaining the reasons, different reasons behind the present neutral stand in Ukraine-Russia war. Okay, so we need to know that there can be analytical type of question, or that's why we should find out the reasons why we are having, or whether we had similar kind of, let's say, stand, neutral stand in the past conflicts also. All these aspects are discussed here. Also, there is a very good interview of, let's say, experts talking on this same issue, India's neutral stand on war and its impact on India-US relations. Okay, so again, it is same context, Ukraine-Russia war and India's the present stand, official stand on that issue, war, and at the same time how it is impacting, whether it is impacting or going to impact India-US relations. That aspect is covered here in that interview discussion. Then one more editorial on page number 6. Again, we are having the discussion on recently signed India-Australia Economic Cooperation and Trade Agreement, Early Harvest Agreement. So again, the details will discuss from Economy GS3 and GS2 paper IR section, India-Australia relations. Fine. Again, India-US 2+2 will discuss key issues, same Ministry of External Affairs. Again, from IR section, you should know that next week there is the 2+2 meeting going to happen. Our External Affairs Minister and Defense Minister is going to visit US in Washington. The meeting is going to happen, and what topics are going to be discussed, what issues are going to be discussed, that aspect is covered here. Then the budget session ended yesterday, and this budget session ends on productive note. We have to find out the facts, factual aspect here, that what was the productivity, which number of bills have been passed by the Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha separately. All these aspects are relevant to our polity part, data, facts related to productivity of the parliament, which is in question in last few years. Okay, yes. Specifically for prelims examination, yes, Russia suspended from Rights Council. So UNHRC, United Nations Human Rights Council. So there was vote. India abstained from that vote again, but with the 2/3 majority, the vote was accepted. The resolution was accepted by UNGA, United Nations General Assembly, and Russia has been suspended from UNHRC. Okay, so for prelims examination, we should know basics of UNHRC. There can be question on this. Okay, let's go in detail about these articles one by one. First article, Ukraine and the anatomy of India's neutrality. Let's understand the reasons behind the present neutral stand that we are having. Okay, so let me tell you that at present, India is not taking any sides in this war. Let's say on one hand, there is Ukraine, which is let's say supported by US and the European Union allies on one side, and then there is Russia, which is to some extent implicitly supported by China also. Okay, so India is taking neutral stand. At the same time, India is emphasizing on ending the violence, ending the human right violations, and resuming the dialogue, solving this dispute in a very peaceful manner through dialogue. Okay, so this is the present stand that we are having on this war. India followed similar kind of stand since independence on the several instances. For example, the article mentions some examples like Soviet interventions in Hungary 1956, in Czechoslovakia in 1968, and Afghanistan 1979. Or if we are talking about US invasion of Iraq in 2003, A similar kind of stand was taken by India, neutral stand, and this has been the philosophy started by Nehru when Nehru was the Prime Minister for almost first 15 years. So he had this kind of, let's say, philosophy followed, and one should also understand that this does not mean India is accepting whatever the human rights violations or promoting the violence. Rather, India is of the view that, or let's say in the words of Nehru, he was of the view that if suppose there is any kind of war is going on, and if suppose some states are taking certain efforts to stop that war and let's say ensure peace, taking any side in that war is basically going against such kind of efforts. It is not going to help. Rather, being neutral, it is to some extent helping solving that dispute. Okay, this aspect you should know here. Then one should also understand that not only India but other countries including US allies and NATO members have a differing stand. For example, South Africa, it has also abstained from, let's say, resolutions or voting in the UN, UNSC, UNGA. UAE also abstained from voting in UNSC resolution against Russia. Also, one should understand that Israel, although accepted, let's say, sanctions, but it is not aligning itself with those sanctions. Okay, so it has, let's say, voted in favor of NATO allies or US, but it is not accepting or aligning with the sanctions. Same is the case with Turkey, which is NATO member. Okay, so that means India is not the lone country here. Then, but why such kind of disproportionate pressure being exerted on India to take certain stand here? One should know that why West-led US is selectively targeting India. Led by US is selectively targeting India. So we can club these reasons under three headings. First is political, second economic, and third strategic reasons. Okay, so what are the political reasons? Yes, of course, the democracy versus communism or socialism. This philosophy, or democracy versus non-democratic country. So here US is emphasizing on this as, let's say, a war against free world. Okay, but here one should understand that why they are emphasizing on India taking the stand, because India is the largest democracy in the world. If India is not taking their side, means their side is having very low weightage at present. That's why they are pressurizing India to take stand. Political reason. Second, economic reason. So economic reason, one should know that they want to have certain kind of, they want to cripple the Russian economy here by imposing such kind of sanctions, isolating Russia from the global economy. Now, if India is not taking stand, that means India will be doing certain kind of business trade with the Russia. Already in Asia, only three countries, Singapore, Japan, and South Korea. Okay, so these three countries have aligned with those sanctions. That means China and other countries, other developing countries of Southeast Asia, so they have not aligned with the sanctions. So if India is not aligning with these sanctions, that means that is going to hurt whatever the, let's say, interest of US and we can say that European countries, European Union countries. Okay, so this economic aspect and strategic reasons. Of course, strategic reasons are also very important, especially after 1991 or let's say fall of USSR or end of Cold War. India is largely aligning with US, especially for defense partnership. So last 20-30 years, India has been moving largely towards US, although India is also dependent on Russia for its defense imports. Okay. So this kind of, let's say, strategic relationship with US is being tested here. Whether India is going to take certain stand in favor of US in, let's say, whatever the defense relationship that has been there. तो वो टेस्ट नहीं हुआ है अभी तक. So this is one, let's say, pressure, one reason that is being exerted by US here. Okay, so you should know these reasons. Now, how does India see this war? We should also understand that. India basically consider this as, let's say, at present it consider this as, let's say, war between US hegemony versus Russia. Okay. One should understand here that India considered at present three major powers in the world: US, then China, and third Russia. Now, how India sees these three in international relations or international power politics, power equations? Yes, we know that these two are largely the major defense powers. Okay, and they are in conflict with each other since, we can say, after Second World War, right? So India is maintaining balance between these two. India is maintaining balance between these two. At the same time, one should know that this is rival to India, rival in a sense becoming the regional power in Asia. Okay, so China is to some extent rival for India, be it in terms of, let's say, political aspect or we can say economic aspect. And yes, US is to some extent having some problematic relations with China now, and China is more aligned with Russia. Okay, so being let's say taking stand in this war between the US and Russia to some extent means losing on the gains up till now we have achieved by maintaining the strategic autonomy. At the same time, how China is maintaining its independence and focusing on economic aspects. Okay, economic recovery. So similar kind of thing India should also do. India is, that's why, not involving in that aspect. Next thing you should know that India is just now, let's say, having the economic recovery from pandemic. So India is largely focusing on maintaining the momentum here from this economic recovery, and that is facing hurdle because of this war. That's why India do not want that war to continue for a long period of time. We have discussed the economic impact of this war in detail on Indian economy and world economy, be it Hindu analysis lecture or ED lecture also. Okay, so we will not go into that part, but yes, to maintain the momentum of this economic growth after this pandemic, for that purpose we do not want to get involved in this power politics. This is how India sees this war. Okay, at the same time we should also understand West is not an innocent bystander in the whole Ukraine crisis. One should know that in 2008 NATO offered its membership to Ukraine. NATO offered membership to Ukraine, and from that time itself Russia started becoming insecure, started feeling insecure, because NATO forces, if Ukraine joins the let's say NATO, then NATO forces will be at its border, and to some extent it is a kind of insecurity created in Russia, and from that point itself onwards, so be it, let's say, 2008 attack on, yes, 2014 we can say Crimea annexation, and 2008 attack on Georgia. Okay, so NATO had offered membership to Ukraine as well as Georgia at that time. So Russia had attacked Georgia also at that time, and 2014 Crimea Peninsula annexation happened of this Ukrainian part, and now the full-fledged war. So this is to some extent instigated by NATO itself, or Western countries itself. Okay, so we can say that it is not the innocent bystander here in this conflict. Like any other country, India also retains the right to take policies based on the pragmatic realism and its core national interest. We yesterday itself learned what is realism, what is idealism or liberalism. Okay, and on the basis of these different philosophies, the decisions are taken in the international relations, foreign policy. Okay, and largely we can say that the national interest guides foreign policy of any country. At present, India's national interest is focusing on economic recovery, strengthening its economic growth, and at the same time protecting its national interest in terms of strategic aspect. At present, we know that on the northern side, northern boundary is its protection, its security. For that, Russian, let's say, along with Russia and Central Asia, relations with this is very important to protect our northern boundary. And if we are talking about the maritime as well, so for maritime security, we require these Quad countries, their strength, US, Japan, Australia, they have the, let's say, naval strengths, and because of that their cooperation is important. That's why we require both, we need both, and that we are maintaining the neutral stand here. Okay, so आपको इस तरीके से उसका एनालिसिस बहुत ही अच्छे से पता होना चाहिए कि हमने ये स्टैंड क्यों लिया है, क्यों ले रहे हैं. Okay, yes, fine. Moving on. See, having the same context, is India's position on Russia affecting its relationship with US? Although the 2+2 meeting is going to happen in US in next week, so thereafter the outcome we will also understand actually what was the impact of this stand. But yes, the interview with two experts in this field is there, and these questions are being asked. External Affairs Minister has said India is on the side of peace in the Ukraine conflict, indicating that India is taking neutral position. Is that how it is being pursued? So one of the expert here is UN representative, or sorry, US representative, and the other expert is our former permanent member at United Nations. Okay, so the US representative here is saying that it is not being pursued positively. It is not being pursued positively, especially by the people of US and by the government of US. Although it is maintaining restraint in taking any actions on India or any kind of sanctions. Okay, but yes, Indian representative, it is saying that the neutral stand is being appreciated largely by, let's say, all political parties in India, or we can say that Russia also. Okay, so this is, you should know that how it is being pursued by the Western countries, that in India also how people are pursuing this particular view. Then next, US has carved out waivers on Europe on energy purchases given continent's dependence on Russia, but not for India's defense dependency. Isn't there a double standard here? Okay, so this is, we have discussed this issue here, that US had sanction, or European countries have sanction on Russia, but there are some waivers, especially for import of natural gas, crude oil. Why? Because they are largely dependent on Russian exports. Okay, but similar kind of, let's say, waivers are not given to other countries including India. So that's why it is being said that as a double standard. Okay, one should know that. First thing, if suppose, let's say, tomorrow India faces any kind of threat from China, on especially northern boundary, so of course India is going to depend on Russia defense equipments. Okay, so US उतना हमारा dependent नहीं है US पे अभी भी. We are evolving at present, but largely we have been dependent on Russia for the defense equipments, defense imports. So any kind of threat from China will require continuity in Russian defense, let's say, imports. First thing. Second thing, one should understand that Indian economy at present is precarious situation, and it requires continuous supply of energy security. Okay, and we know that 85% of India's imports of crude oil is imported, although only 1% from Russia. India is not dependent on Russia for imports of crude oil and gas. Still, why it is being emphasized? So there should be some waivers for defense equipments. India is dependent on that. Such kind of waivers should be there. Although let's say we have not taken yet decision regarding any kind of, let's say, defense purchase or oil purchase. Let's see what happens in this 2+2 meeting. Okay, so remember this question or the reasons here also why we are saying that it is double standard. Is India's position on Russia and on Ukraine war impacting India-US ties? What do you expect from 2+2 ministerial meeting in Washington next week? So here our Indian representative is saying that the US should be concerned about India's interest. As US is taking its own decisions on the basis of its own national interest, so being the strategic partner of India, it should also consider the interest of its strategic partner. Okay, so like for example during Iran sanctions, so US had waived off certain, let's say given some waiver for India's import of oil from Iran. ठीक है, वहाँ पे कोई strict हमें मतलब problem नहीं हुआ था. Okay, in 2018. So same case here also India should consider India's interest as being the strategic partner for US. This aspect. So we'll understand what will be the outcome of this. At the same time, the experts are of the view that giving open threat is not good thing, especially when we are strategic partners. So recently what happened is US deputy NSA came to India, and in a public, let's say, appearance, he has threatened that there will be dire consequences if India has let's say purchases oil and natural gas from Russia, or any kind of, let's say, bilateral trade happens in rupee ruble system. Such kind of open threats are not good for relations. Okay, it is kind of, let's say, it creates a hostility in the relations, and especially when you are strategic partners. Okay, so that should not happen. Any kind of differences, they should be resolved in indoor meeting. They should be resolved in indoor meetings. आप मीडिया के सामने ऐसे स्टेटमेंट नहीं दे सकते हैं. Okay, this is not good for, let's say, long-term relationship between India and US. Okay, so this point you should know here. Then lastly, what about the US future focus? Will the war in Europe take the focus away from Indo-Pacific and Quad? Yes, to some extent it depends on India's stand, and India's stand is evolving. ये जो है ना, यहाँ पे आप समझना चाहिए कि इंडिया स्टैंड इज इवॉल्विंग. हमने स्टार्ट में जो है बिल्कुल ही स्ट्रिक्टली न्यूट्रल रहे हैं. ओके, वी डिड नॉट गिव एनी काइंड ऑफ रेफरेंस टू रशिया at all, any kind of, let's say, reference to that country, but later on we started, you know, criticizing implicitly we are seeing, especially for human right violation. जैसे recently एक incident हुआ है, वहाँ पे हमने बोला UN में कि independent inquiry होना चाहिए. This is for the first time India has taken such stand for human right violation. So this is good thing. It is evolving stand, and in future we do not know yet what will happen. If suppose Russia takes further aggressive stand and start invading Ukraine completely, and there are let's say many civilian deaths that happen, India as a, let's say, there will be huge moral pressure on India to take the stand here. Okay, so this is the situation. Talking about, let's say, perspective of Indo-Pacific and Quad. Of course, these countries, Japan, US, Australia, they are cooperating with India on Quad and Indo-Pacific. And India is, let's say, the anchoring country of all these countries' policy in Indo-Pacific. So, if India is not taking the stand in favor, or if it is even maintaining the neutral stand, largely it is not going to affect the relation in this area, Indo-Pacific and Quad. But suppose India takes stand in favor of Russia, then that creates the problem. Right? So yes, it is not going to have much, let's say, negative impact on this, whatever the let's say relations are there in this area of foreign affairs, Indo-Pacific and the Quad. Okay, although at present momentarily the attention, the focus of these countries has shifted to Russia-Ukraine war. Okay? Yes. Beyond border Gavaskar. Why the name Beyond Border Gavaskar? We are talking about India-Australia relations, and whenever we talk about India-Australia, largely the cricket has been the major area of, we can say, focus for these two countries. And this Border Gavaskar trophy is very, let's say, important for both countries. ठीक है, तो going beyond the cricket, we have now signed the economic cooperation and trade agreement. It is being called as early harvest agreement, which will be further modified in future for the full-fledged free trade agreement. Okay, so yes, early harvest agreement ECTA covers gamut of economic and commercial relations, including trade in goods and services, rules of origin, technical barriers to trade, dispute settlement, customs procedure. All these aspects are covered, so that's why it is being called as comprehensive trade agreement. So this is a good thing. Now focus here, targeting goal of doubling bilateral trade to $50 billion from at present $27.5 billion 2021 in next 5 years. The partners have set about dismantling and lowering the tariff barriers. Tariff barriers कैसे कम करेंगे? So around 95% of India's exports, they will have, let's say, tariff free entry into Australia, especially the labor intensive goods, while around 80 to 85% of this, 85%, so that will be Australia's goods exports into India, that will have lower tariff or no tariff. So this is how they are trying to reduce the tariff barriers. Talking about, let's say, a specific sector, as it is early harvest sector, the contentious sector like dairy sector, politically significant export industry in Australia, were set aside for separate resolution at later talks. Okay, it is also cause of concern for Indian farmers, dairy farmers. Okay, so that's why it is going to be a separate area of, we can say, discussion, negotiations further. In terms of goods and services, if we are talking about goods, Australia's exports, especially raw material as minerals, they will get preference. Talking about agriculture commodity, so alcoholic beverages, wine, so this industry is going to get boost. Talking about India, India's export, especially labor intensive, textile, leather, okay, so cotton, textile, leather, all these industries will receive some boost here for the export. At the same time, we should also know for the services. So for services, yes, IT sector is there, and then we should know that financial sector is there. If we are talking about from India, the exports of certain services like yoga teachers, they will get preference here. If we are talking about, let's say, Indian chefs, they will be able to work there in Australia. Talking about movement of people, so in addition to these, especially the education sector in Australia, so Indian students will further get visa concessions studying in Australia. Okay, so one of the important mechanism is compulsory review mechanism after 15 years. So this is important mechanism added here. Talking about this aspect like rules of origin, this is especially for, you know, it will act as an anti-dumping measure. Waste material is not able to dump in those countries. Also technical barriers, especially for sanitary and phytosanitary aspect under World Trade Organization, जो हमारा एग्रीमेंट है, एग्रीमेंट ऑन सैनिटरी एंड फाइटोसैनिटरी, उसके लिए एस्पेक्ट्स ये वहाँ पे चेकिंग होगा. Okay, so all these aspects are there, and we expect that in future the economic relations between India and Australia are going to be growing. One should also understand why Australia is taking such kind of measures. Australia wants to, you know, diversify its import export market, especially away from China. In recent years, Australia has been facing conflict with China in different manner, be it related in economic aspects as well as defense related aspect. So that's why it is growing relations with India are happening because of this conflict. Okay, yes. Now moving on, India-US 2+2 will discuss key issues, says Ministry of External Affairs. So key issues that will include, let's say, comprehensive review of cross-cutting issues in the bilateral agenda related to foreign policy, defense, security, with objective of providing strategic guidance vision for further consolidating relationship. Although it is broader statement, the actual outcome after the meeting, then we will discuss this. At the same time, let's say Defense Secretary of US said upcoming meeting would focus talks about defense cooperation and two sides on free and open Indo-Pacific. Right? Okay. Budget session ends on productive note. Productive in a sense, how many bills have been enacted or passed by the different houses, two houses of the parliament. At the same time, the sitting hours of these two houses during the session. So Lok Sabha passed 13 bills, Rajya Sabha 11 bills, including we can say finance bill, appropriation bill. Then total productivity of the 8th session of 17th Lok Sabha was 129%. 129% in a sense, the additional hours they sat and then they discussed this budget as well as the other, we can say, bills. Rajya Sabha recorded impressive functioning of clocking 99.8% productivity. You should know that in recent times, especially before this 16th Lok Sabha and during the UPA government 14th and 15th Lok Sabha, it faced lot of criticism in terms of a lot of disruptions and poor productivity on the floor of this houses, and because of that, let's say it was criticized. ठीक है? So now it is improving and this is good sign. आपने आंसर में ये recent facts बताने चाहिए. ठीक है? Russia suspended from Human Rights Council. Okay, so there was one resolution that was backed by US and other countries here, including Ukraine, and there was voting in UNGA, United Nations General Assembly, and this voted in favor of the resolution with 93 to 24. Okay, and India abstained with, let's say, 58 abstentions, including India, to adopt the resolution. Right, so this resolutions required 2/3 majority of present and voting, and this present and voting does not include abstentions in UNGA. One should also, yes, understand, let's say, basic information about UNHRC for prelims examination. So yes, it is UN arm for human right protections in different parts of the world. So it is intergovernmental body within the UN system made of 47 states responsible for promotion and protection of all human rights around the globe. The council was created by UNGA on 2006. Okay, so it meets at UN office in Geneva. 47 UN members are elected by UNGA. Each elected member serves term of 3 years. ठीक है, 3 years का term है. UNGA elect करता है 47 UN members को as a member of UNHRC. Then countries are disallowed from occupying seat for more than 2 consecutive terms. At the same time, this council replaced the former UN Commission on Human Rights. Okay, UN CHR था पहले, now HRC हुआ है. At the same time, this UNHRC passes non-binding resolutions on human rights issues through periodic review on all 193 UN member states, called as Universal Periodic Review, UPR. It is part of, we can say, periodic review by UNHRC. Now, what should be answer to this question? Just now we have learned about UNHRC. Yes, you can attempt this question. You can give your answer in the comment box. Okay, so the question is about United Nations Human Rights Council and we have to find the correct statements, right? So look at the first statement. It is made up of 47 UN members elected by UNGA. So this is correct statement. There can be confusion in terms of number. Okay, factually incorrect भी हो सकता है. UPSC exam अगर पूछता है UPSC तो उसमें each elected member serves for a term of 2 years. So this is incorrect, right? It is not for 2 years, rather it is for 3 years. Term of elected member. Then the countries are disallowed from occupying seat for more than 2 consecutive terms. This is correct. Okay, so 1 and 3 here in this particular question, correct statement. So B should be the answer, right? Okay, fine. So if you have any question regarding this discussion, you can ask in the comment box. In tomorrow's session, we can try to resolve those queries Okay, also one new announcement that at Lukmaan IAS after June, after prelims examination, we are starting with geography optional test series. Okay, those who are having geography test, let's say geography optional subject, or your friends are having geography optional subject, so you can tell them about this course. This will have total 10 tests, 8 sectional tests, as well as 2 mock tests will be there on paper 1 and paper 2. At the same time, the design of the test series in a manner, in such a manner that whenever the students are facing lot of problems, especially for paper 1 physical geography, we are having dedicated focus in our test series on those topics. At the same time, dedicated, let's say, one test especially is on geographical models and we can say different perspectives in human geography. Okay, so a special test will be on that topic only of paper 1 of your optional subject. Okay, so for further, knowing more information, to know more information on that course, you can contact Lukmaan IAS. Fine, thank you.